All right, everybody, don't go anywhere because I have to do something first before I forget. That's exactly what I wanted to do, record it in progress. Hello, everybody. It's raining here in DeLand, sort of. And this is Lorna Owens. Thank you for joining me at my kitchen table. You know, we have to start it correctly. So let me pour myself a cup of This is a hibiscus blend that we carry. And let me tell you, I've been waiting for this for a long time. This is really, really exciting. I want to make sure that the folks on Facebook can see us nice and well. So, Facebook, I am looking for you guys. If I don't see you, I'll come back and get to you. But the intent is that I get all of you, those who are my friends and those who are not. But we'll come back and find you once the Facebook decide to kick in. Tonight, I have with me, I hear people say this all the time, but I think it is true, the great Larry Wansley. And he is a former Marine, former cop out of Compton, former FBI agent, head of global security for American Airlines, head of security for the Dallas Cowboys, formerly headed up security for Whitney Houston for her world tour, written a couple books, but the new one is called, you guys have to see the book jacket, it's really cool. Tough Street, Rough Skies, and Sunday Sideline. Larry, welcome. Well, before, and the way I want to thank Susan Hoffman because she's the one who just kept saying, you got to meet my friend Larry, you got to meet my friend Larry. And then I find out, Larry, that we have a friend in common, Loretta McNair. So to those
Yes.
ladies, a big shout out. Larry, welcome to my kitchen table.
Well, thank you so very, very much. It is a joy to be at the kitchen table.
Wonderful. So listen, Larry, let's jump right in. First of all, you're Larry Wansley, but you've been known as many other names, right? Um, Mandrake, that tell me about Mandrake. And before you say that, that was your undercover name, but do you have the same name all the time? And so how does that work?
Well, undercover, no, I had five separate identities, but Mandrake was a nickname that began back in my early days at Compton. And there was now you're too young for this, but there was a cartoon called Mandrake the Magician, and Mandrake the Magician was a crime fighter, etc. And as a young rookie at Compton, one of the detectives happened to come by the break room while I was just simply reading the paper and having a cup of coffee. And he said, I need some help with the lineup. I need you to join the lineup and just, we've got some suspects and
Mhm.
need you to come help us out with the lineup. And I said, okay, fine. Anyway, changed clothes. I went upstairs and here I am with five other guys or four other guys in a police lineup. I had not been really briefed on it or anything like that, but the prime suspect was obviously a part of that lineup. Anyway, we uh, we got started, and of course he's behind the partition and with the witnesses and so forth, and he's asking questions. So with each person, step forward, state your name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just having been tossed into the mix there, so forth, we got to the point where the guy next to me, they asked him, what's your name as he stepped forward? And his name was Magruder, Willie Magruder, or something like that. I can't recall exactly. But immediately he called upon me, and then it was showtime, like right now, instantly step forward, come up with a name. And in an instant, I'm thinking, well, I can't use my real name. So I said, Mandrake Magruder. And he said, are you related to the guy next door? No, not really. Anyway, we get through the lineup when it's all over, and the detective he said, "Where in the hell did you come up with the name Mandrake Magruder and the same name as the guy next to you?" Anyway, that's how it started, and from that point
Oh
on,
no, oh
yes,
no. But
that's
I tell you, I don't know if it's a good idea. As a former prosecutor, I don't know if it's a good idea to put law enforcement in lineup. Because I've heard a story where the person identifying supposedly the
Oh,
defendant identified the cop.
right.
Right?
It was not a wise move for several reasons, but I totally agree with you.
All right, okay, Mandrake. So let's go to something where it's big for America. You know, we talk about being in the room where it happened, 9/11. Walk us through that because even when I was thinking about asking you about it, it brought chills to my spine. And I assume this is something you never lived down. You went to work, an ordinary day. Start there, please.
At 7:45 every day, we would have an operational meeting, conference call, basically every entity around the globe. I reported to the vice chairman at that time and routinely would join him and then three of my colleagues in his office, but everybody else in the system would be on the call. But that's how it worked. I was walking into his office at 7:45 that morning. His assistant said, Larry, hold on. I've got a phone call for you. She handed me the phone, and it was our center manager, and that was the on-duty 24/7 American Airlines Operations Center, which accounts for every plane in the sky all over the world. And it's a phenomenal building or a phenomenal room because there is a light representing every airplane. And he said, Larry, we've got a missing airplane. I said, what do you
Hold on.
mean?
So you kind of just kind of said it. I mean, it's concerned, but it's certainly not at the level that we now know it to be. It's just like a query, Larry, we have a missing airplane and you're trying
Right.
to figure it, yeah?
Exactly. At that moment, he said, we've got a missing airplane. I said, okay, well, what's happening? He said, we cannot raise Flight 11. We've been trying. We cannot get in contact with them. So we talked through that for a couple of minutes, and I said, okay, well, clearly we have to presume that it's hijacked. So we have to activate our hijacking plan. And I told my boss's assistant to call down to my office, get my two senior managers over to the command center right away. I then picked up another phone. I dialed Danny Deffenbaugh, a good friend who was the agent in charge of the Dallas FBI office. And I told him, Danny, I've got a missing airplane. We've got to presume that it's hijacked. He said, okay, I will have 8 or 10 agents headed to your office immediately after this. And in our offices, as you know, as a prosecutor and in law enforcement offices, particularly FBI, TVs are on all the time,
Right.
monitoring the breaking news. And while I was on the phone with Danny, the TV in the next room, which I could see clearly, uh, depicted a reporter standing in front of the North World Trade Center tower. And I stuck my head in there, and he was reporting that there was a small plane crashed into the North Tower, and the camera panned up, and sure enough, there was a plume of smoke. And I'm on the phone, Danny was watching it, and I said, well, that's really sad, but it's probably a private aircraft out of Teterboro. And let's get back to my hijacking. As soon as I said that, Danny and I both watched as United 175 crashed into the South World Trade Center tower. At that moment, we were both stunned. And then Danny said, Larry, we're at war. And at that moment, we were. And from that point on, uh, it was pandemonium. After that, American 77 crashed into the Pentagon. And after that, United 93 into the field in Pennsylvania. And as you recall, it was pandemonium after that. We at American ordered our flights on every flight on the ground as quickly as possible. And that was about 10 minutes prior to the FAA ordering all airlines on the ground, ground stops, period, nothing flying. But we simply did not know what else was going to be happening. And as the events played out, surely it was a terrorist attack, and it was the most horrible day in my life. Um, as you know, everything was grounded, nothing was flying for days and days and days, and we were trying to sort through all of that. Later on, probably about 3 weeks later, a little over 3 weeks, I guess, I was up at ground zero, which again was a very, very heartbreaking reminder of that absolutely horrible terrorist attack on our nation. We were all stunned. We were just trying to, as best we could, manage the situation because we didn't know where else we would be attacked from. Um,
So Larry, let me, you talk about it and one feels almost you're transported back to that day. I think it's just one of those feelings and reaction that never leave you. So you all ground your planes, but how did some of the planes end up in Gander, Newfoundland? Who made that call and where did those planes leave from to get there?
Well, many of them, everything was in the air at the time, and the order was get on the ground as quickly as you can, nearest airport, whatever can accommodate you. It was panic. It was not only American Airlines, it was every airplane flying in the sky around the world. So wherever they could get landing space and be accommodated, that's where they went into because you simply did not know, do we have more flying bombs, more flying airplanes around that are going to be taken out of service, that are going to be hijacked and so forth. So the immediate order was to get on the ground as quickly as you possibly can, wherever you can.
Ah, so where you were, that was command center. Does that mean everybody rushed to that location or people were everywhere else? Where was the priority location where you were?
Well, the priority location was at headquarters because that's where everything starts. And every department had a representative that deployed to the command center. And we would have drills all the time. Uh, any airplane crash, any kind of emergency, we would activate the command center, and every department had its particular role to play in managing that disaster, that catastrophe, that crash, whatever it is. And out in the field around the world, every station had its emergency plan, but everything was coordinated through the command center at our headquarters in Dallas or in Fort Worth.
And then you guys fed into the FBI. Is that what happened? Because at the so if people don't know who is top of all of this, FBI. Who is it?
FBI.
FBI, right?
Yes, there were several federal agencies that obviously were involved, but FBI in terms of investigation, the FAA in terms of operations and so forth, everybody had a stake in it, but the bottom line is the buck stopped with the FBI in terms of investigating terrorism.
Boy, oh boy, you we could stay on that one topic forever because it's surreal and it's unreal. But let me put a little bit of levity in there before I jump to something else. When you started first, you in Marines out of high school, and then then you became a cop in Compton. Something that I think hilarious happened. Actually, I don't know if it's hilarious. The point of the matter is the
It
first
is.
you had baptism by fire. But listen, Larry, I feel for you because as a prosecutor, I remember saying, I want to try a case first week, and they give me the file, and I think I have next, I'll take it home for the weekend and study it. And they're like, no, no, run to court. But that's minor as to what happened to you. Please tell the people what happened to you and what your response was, because I don't want to laugh at you, so I'm going to make you tell it yourself.
Well,
Besides
I'm
the
laughing because looking back, it's hilarious. It was not at the time, but the situation was one where I actually had no intention of being a cop, being in law enforcement. That's another story that I just happened to wind up accidentally becoming a cop. My third day on the job, and I was one of 12 rookies at Compton, and we were in the academy. And the third day on the job was one where the Watts riot started, and that was in August of 1965. Compton geographically was adjacent to Watts, the Watts section of LA. That was Riot Central, and it spread into Compton, which at that time was a bedroom community. But the riots really, really encroached into Compton, the flames and everything else. So consequently, there as a rookie, my third day on the job in class, and our watch commander came into the room and he said, "We have to put all uniforms on the street as quickly as possible. All you rookies are going to be paired up out into the street. Don't worry about a thing. We'll put you with veteran officers and everything will be okay. But we've got to get everybody out into the street." So they paired me up with a veteran officer and we hit the street. And within the first 20 minutes, and we turned into a light industrial area and we were ambushed. And as best as we could tell, there was probably 5 or 6 guys, and we are in a firefight like you wouldn't believe. I mean, this was the sort of thing that you see on TV and in the movies and what have you, but we were heavily under fire. We had been ambushed. And so consequently, my partner bailed out over on his side, the driver's side, I on the passenger side, and we're obviously seeking cover as much as possible. But my partner yelled out to me, "Get us some help." Okay, well, I did know, even 3 days on the job, 999 means officer needs desperate help right now. I did know that, worked my way back to the microphone in the car, and I broadcast the 999. What happened at that time is when I did, there were probably anywhere from 60 to 70, maybe as many as 80 people who heard my 999 call with the gunfire in the background. And they could tell. I mean, there was a battle. Anyone listening to that knew that these guys are really in a firefight. And with the adrenaline pumping, it's hot, you're sweating, you're excited, and everything else. And I made a critical mistake that day, for which I pay for now. And the situation is, picture me, we're shooting, my partner's shooting, we're heavily under fire. The dispatcher asked me, "What's your 1020?" Meaning, what's your location? Well, amidst all the adrenaline pumping and everything else, I didn't realize that I had keyed the microphone and what I said then went out over the air. And
Ah.
I yelled, and from your business and knowing law enforcement officers, when I yelled out to my partner, "Where are we?" He then proceeded to berate me a la Samuel Jackson Pulp Fiction style. He talked about my my heritage, my sexuality, my lack of intelligence, every conceivable bad thing and vulgar thing he could say, he did. That went out over the air. And amidst all the gunfire and the excitement and everything else in the background. And the message was, you always know where you are, no matter
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
And so I saw a small sign on a building, told the dispatcher, "We get the situation under control much later." But from that point on, my partner did not speak to me all the way back to the station, never said a word. I knew he was furious. I was scared to death, obviously. But when we got back to the station, walking in, I encountered 2 officers who came out and they got in my face and said, "Wansley." What's your 1020?
Let, let me ask you the now, it just occurred to me now, does one have to say where they are? Don't you guys have to tracker now with the new technology? Well, it wouldn't be that serious now because they would know where you are, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, technology has changed everything. So they would know where you are and everything else. But back then,
Oh my
that
God.
was not much of anything. All you had was the radio, which was your lifeline, but that was it. That was a long, long time ago. But to this day, and those of us that are still around, and those who actually have heard the story, every couple of years or so, we have a little reunion. And every time,
Okay.
every time someone sees me, they get in my face and say, Wansley, what's your 1020? And
Okay.
so that
I'm gonna
is
let
the
I'm gonna let
that's
my audience know that you have grown from that. That was
yes.
just the first day on the job, and it could happen to anybody because you were part of a huge recovery of some millions of dollars out of Compton as it relates to bonds and security. And it was a you did a for 2 years you created this undercover sting operation that was really very successful. Tell us about it.
Well, that was after I left Compton, I went into the FBI. And I became an undercover agent in the FBI. I was one of those, the very, very first, because when I went into the bureau, that was right after the former director, J. Edgar Hoover, had passed away. So the bureau changed a lot. There were a lot of new techniques, law enforcement techniques that were being employed and everything else. So the FBI started an undercover program, and I happened to be one of those people that was part of that vanguard. I was the only black agent at that particular time. But in any case, we started a program where basically I was set up in business in Hollywood. We catered to uh, thieves of all kind, be it white collar, be it whatever. But we were an investment company, and I was the head of that. And then there were three other officers. Well, there was another FBI agent, and then there were two Los Angeles County deputy sheriff investigators. So we comprised this company, and our business was basically buying up all the kind of stolen merchandise that you can possibly think of, everything from negotiable bonds to weapons to cars to trucks, you name it, we did it. And that's how that got started. And then my role, my persona morphed into one of being a, for lack of a better description, I catered to the the elite criminals in the Beverly Hills, Hollywood jet set type thing. A lot of them were very, very well-known entertainers and celebrities who happened to be crooks. And so consequently, that was my life. That's where I made my bones, so to speak, as being an undercover agent. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. So consequently, that set the tone for the rest of my FBI career.
Okay, Mandrake. So listen, do you were you an FBI agent in Miami? Remember in the late 79, there was crime beyond crime with Latin America and all like that. People were walking up to folks in restaurants and just executing them. Um, the morgue ran out of freezers and had to get it from retail. Were you a part of that grouping, or you remember it?
Well, I remember it, and I had associates, other agents that were involved in that. But back during those times, I ultimately became a have phony ID and a story will travel. So I began to work around the country in terms of specific operations where they needed someone to infiltrate a particular situation and everything else. And frankly, that Miami situation Uh, Abscam, you may remember that. The
Right.
That was a major operation, and there were only just a few of us that did that kind of work at the time. But it's really kind of a small world in the sense that what happened back then, and then in subsequent years, at American Airlines, obviously, I spent a lot of time and a lot of focus in Miami, Caribbean, Latin America, a lot of the type activities that were going on, the smuggling, the assassinations, you name it. So it all sort of really melded into just a very strange, mysterious, and dangerous world.
People perhaps don't realize, depending on what you're going undercover as, it could be millions of dollars creating this persona of being this wealthy, in your case, African prince or something like that. It's how does that work? And where does the money come from? And how does that infrastructure? And do you, or does a person, if having lived that life, especially if you're in that elite, very expensive class, does it bleed over into your social life and you forget that you can't just go walk in and buy a Maserati or something like how do you balance it? Because it takes over your brain and your essence and you have a different person. How does one do that and not go crazy?
Well, unfortunately, there were a couple of agents who wound up going over to the other life. And the importance of being grounded is so significant because every undercover agent, and it's changed dramatically over the years now. It's much more sophisticated, the screening and so forth, uh, to determine if a person is suitable for that kind of work is intense. The FBI and law enforcement does a phenomenal job at that, but particularly the FBI because it all started there. But there are times, and I was very fortunate because I had a very good contact agent. He was my umbilical cord. He was that lifeline back to reality because you can become so in tune to that life and living that life. Um, it's very difficult to maintain your balance. It truly is. I had a difficult time, but I was very fortunate in that my contact agent kept me grounded and so forth because switching forward to my family at that time, my wife and I made a deal, and that was I would leave the other guy outside when I came home, which was rare because maybe a couple times a month I would be able to sneak home and spend a few days, which was another traumatic situation because I frightened my family, my kids particularly. Here would be this strange guy rolling up in an expensive car. I had long hair, full beard. I mean, I was a person they did not know.
Mm.
And it was a very uncomfortable situation. But back then, we didn't have cell phones or anything like that. We had pagers and answering services. So the world knew me as someone else, and all the people that I dealt with would reach me through the pager and the answering service. As time went on and I became better and better and better at what I did and more well known, um, people would call the answering service and the answering service would say, hold on, and they would send me a page. I've got Louis on the line. Do you want to talk to him? No, take a message or what have you. So that's how the communication went. But the problem about all that at that time was the fact that it was very easy. And if you weren't careful, those two lives could really meld together. They really could. And
Yeah.
there were guys that had difficulty with that.
And also to forming relationship. You were married, but how does a guy or girl date? I mean, I don't know how that works.
It
Because
doesn't
and how do you trust somebody that said, well, I'm not Mandrake. How does that work?
it doesn't work. It does not work. It takes a very special person to do that. I mean, the lessons that we learned were strictly trial and error. Uh, One problem that I had, I mean, I was a wheeler dealer there, in that environment. And one night, I had some people coming in from Las Vegas. We were going to do a deal, and there was a particular place that I hung out at, and a lot of celebrities did, and it was the in place. And I walked in, the bartender poured my regular drink, and I was sitting there waiting on the two guys that were coming in from out of town. And the bartender brought over another drink and said, "That's from the lady over there." Oh, okay. Well, what's she drinking? Thank you very much. What's she drinking? And I'll go join her. And he said, "Well, she's drinking Dom Perignon." I said, "Fine, give me a bottle and a couple of glasses." Well, I mean, it's the government's money. It wasn't mine. But I went over to her, and so we started a conversation and everything. And she said, "Look, I've seen you around town. I have to ask you a question." She said, "I'm interested, but are you gay?" I said, "No, I'm not gay. Why would you ask a question like that?" And she said, "I've never seen you with a woman. You're always with guys and so forth." And I said, "Oh, no, it just happened to be a coincidence, but no, I've got girlfriends and so forth." And she said, "Oh, okay." Well, that night, I mean, I panicked when she said that because for all of the planning that we made in terms of establishing my background, my alter ego's background, and he could be checked by law enforcement, and you'd come up with this very, very extensive criminal record, but no convictions and so forth. Everything was in place that established me as a very, very smart crook. The one thing missing was the female side of it.
Yeah, yeah.
That night, I called my squad supervisor, and I said, "Hey, look, we missed the boat on this thing. This is what just happened. We've got to fix this." And he said, "Holy smokes, yeah, great apartment, you got fancy cars and clothes and everything else. Now you wanted me to be your pimp?" So I said, "Well, I have to have a romantic interest because the persona that we have out there attracts people, and we've got to fix that." So from that point on, now we started looking at in the FBI, we started looking for female agents that could play the role of my love interest, my girlfriend, or something like that, to
Right.
basically keep away from situations where you would actually get involved with innocent people or crooks or what have you. And it was something that we simply did not plan for, we didn't think about, because all of this was at the very, very beginning of using that whole technique and so forth. So it was learning by going.
Y'all can keep that mess. That's too much responsibility for me. So, no, I'm not going to be FBI. I'm telling you right now. You also, when you were at the Dallas Cowboy, Larry, you have too much interesting stories. We want to talk about what happened with Coach Tom Landry.
Yes,
Tell us about that and how you handled that.
we had a Monday night game in Los Angeles, well, actually at Anaheim, but we were playing the LA Rams at the time, and routinely, we have our procedures and everything else. Everything is going along well, with the exception of the fact that the Rams were beating us to death. And I received a phone call, and in my position during the course of the game at certain times, I was up in the box. I was contacted up there by phone, and I was told by the league official that they needed me down. They needed to meet me down in the locker room right away. I went down there. I met with him. I met with the Anaheim Police Department, FBI at the time, and they said there has been a credible death threat against Coach Landry. Oh, yes, and it's credible. We've put some measures in place, searching in the stands and so forth. And this is while the game is going on. This is Monday Night Football where millions of people are watching. And they said, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'll go get my coach off the field right away. I went out there and during the course of the game, and I walked up to Coach Landry and I stood there alongside him and I said, Coach, we have what's been established as a credible death threat against you. I need to get you off the field right away. He said, okay. He had his clipboard. He turned to Danny White, who was our quarterback at the time, and he was standing next to him. And he told Danny, you're in charge. I'm leaving with Larry. And that was it. We walked off the field, and I had a human cocoon around the coach. Basically, we escorted him off the field. Picture Al Michaels and Frank Gifford, who were doing the broadcast, and they're watching on live Monday night TV as millions are watching across the nation, and we're walking off the field. And there's a lot of speculation as to what's happening. Obviously, it has to be a security incident and so forth. But we went back to the locker room, met with the law enforcement people there, gave the coach a briefing as to what was happening. And I said, Coach, I really would like to have you call the rest of the game from upstairs in the coach's box. Coach Landry was one of the finest men I ever knew, and he was a man of faith. He said, Larry, I've got nothing but total confidence in you and your team here, your people, and I really would like to be out on the field with my men, with my team. And I said, okay. I looked nearby, there was an officer who was about the same size, a uniformed officer, and I asked if we could borrow his ballistic vest. He said, yes. So picture Coach Landry and the officer, they're peeling off their shirts and everything. And we put the vest on Coach Landry. He then got redressed and back on the field we went. Well, there was so much speculation about why we left and everything. And of course, there was a lot of rumor, speculation about why we did that. It had to be some sort of security threat. When we went back on the field, the cameras panned in and they had a before and after, they had a before shot of Coach Landry, and then they had after. And you could see part of the vest, which was not there before we took him off. So right then, obviously the announcers and the viewers, they began to get a little different picture. When we went back on the field, I had also told several players, look, this is what's happening. I need you guys to kind of crowd around the coach. And
No,
I,
no, no, that listen, that got me because basically these are human shields for the coach,
right.
and they're not FBI. They had guarding the coach or the president. What you're actually telling them, they could be in a position to have to take a bullet for the coach. Carry
Well,
on with the story. Carry on with the story.
I was then thinking from the standpoint of an FBI SWAT guy. I was a sniper and I had all that kind of background. So I'm thinking that I will, with these guys who are huge and they're in uniforms and pads and helmets and everything else, I'm thinking about spoiling the sight picture for any sniper in the stands that's going to try and take him out. They won't get a clear shot at him. That was my technical perspective on it. And when I told the guys, kind of crowd around him and everybody's looking at me, and there was one voice from back of the crowd that expressed an expletive that I won't share with the viewers. But we got the situation under control and afterward, but we had a lot of laughs about it, but we critiqued a lot. It was a lesson learned for the Cowboys, the NFL, because after we did what we did on our sideline, they then decided that they would maybe pose the threat, direct the threat to the opposing coach because he didn't have all this protection and everything else. So During those times, I've been very, very fortunate to have been in situations that were firsts, and it established the need for planning, the need for operations, the need for contingencies and everything else. And ironically enough, it's been that way with me in every career stop that I've made. And I'm a firm believer that the Lord puts you where He wants you. And
You just took away that from me. God knew, that you could stand up to the test, and we never ask why. We just serve, right?
that's exactly it.
Yeah, and it's a powerful testimony. Hey guys, listen. There might eventually at some point be a part two because we haven't talked about Patty Hearst, we haven't talked about Whitney Houston, we haven't talked about the TSA, but that's okay because you guys are going to buy the book. The book is called, and you can get it at Amazon or wherever books are sold, Tough Streets, Rough Skies, and Sunday Sidelines. And Larry Wansley is the author of that. We have met. I'm Lorna Owens. I am the owner of Desert Sage Lifestyle Wellness Company. Let me tell you something really, really interesting. Every time you purchase from us, 15% goes to support the work I do around the world to help reduce maternal and infant mortality. So go check us out at desert-sage.co, or if you're anywhere in Central Florida, stop by our store, 101 Artisan Alley. You get amazing teas and candles, lotions, natural body wash, and all that stuff. But don't forget that every 92nd, a woman dies from complication of pregnancy that can easily be prevented. And our goal, our vision is to train 100 midwives for the continent of Africa. That will make all the difference in the world. So go check us out. Also check out my new book. It's called Desert Sage, Wonderful World of Tea, From Ancient Leaves to Modern Wellness. Finding wherever books are sold on Amazon. Keep me in your prayers. I head out to Ghana soon, and next Sunday. But this, Larry, thank you. Larry, this is just absolutely amazing, and I guess we should thank all the women and men of the FBI and those service things because you guys it's a job, but you guys sacrifice a lot, right? And it's significant work you all do to keep us safe and keep the bad guys and bad girls behind bars. Larry, what next for you, and how can people reach you?
People can reach me, go to my LinkedIn page. We're in the process of really creating a new dynamic website, and but they can reach me on LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it. My daughter and a couple of other folks are doing that. I'm an old war horse, so
They're helping you. You have people helping you out. Praise
but
the Lord.
but I'll show you the picture of the book. Just go to Amazon and would appreciate it. I would say that you mentioned the men and women of the FBI. All those in law enforcement are doing such a phenomenal job, and the work has changed. It's not just a job anymore, it's a commitment. And we are so grateful to those people that are out there putting their lives on the line every day. So don't forget about them. And also, I just want to say thank you for the work that you are doing. It is incredible. I did not know that much about it. And thanks again to my friend Suzanne Hoffman. And by the way, I call her TL, the Tiger Lady. But and she introduced us, and I have to say, I am so impressed with the work that you are doing. God bless you. And if there's ever any way at all that I can be of service or help, please
Yeah,
let
no,
me
peace and blessing. This is just hello. I collect friends. I collect friends on
know.
my own. I collect friends of friends. So we're not going, you're not going to, we'll figure out something, Larry. But this is lovely. Guys, go get the book. I mean, let me tell you, it is amazing, amazing. We just touched the surface. We could go on for a couple of
Oh,
days.
sure.
But Larry, peace and blessings. And Much love and thanks a lot. And we'll see you sometime, right?
Thank you.
Perfect.
Safe
Bye.
travel. Take care. Bye now.